Welcome back to another edition of the Daily Memphians Memphis Grizzlies podcast. This is your host, Drew Hill, joined, as always, by Chris Herrington. Back from vacation, Chris Herrington. Chris, why don't you start by telling the people where you were, what you were doing, and how you have since caught up on your Grizzlies Summer League?
Yeah, I'm supposed to still be on vacation, but the week 2 second trip got canceled on us, so I'm not in Seattle. I am back in the Twin Cities. We were down at the beach, down on the Gulf Coast, the Gulf of Mexico, and with all the Memphis family, and doing a lot of cooking, doing a lot of sitting on the beach, reading, playing some dominoes, playing some spades. I was able to watch a big chunk of Summer League, all the Utah stuff, which was before we left. And I saw, I didn't see the championship game yet, but I saw the game before. I saw the Boozer Wilson against Chicago. Like, it timed out pretty well that I saw a pretty big chunk of it. And then I've obviously looked at some highlights and stats on the rest. And so I was following Summer League pretty well. I was not otherwise following much of anything. I basically stopped looking at my phone. I was barely even looking at text messages from people unless they were important. So I was definitely in vacation mode for the most part.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you got a break. Good for you, Chris. You deserve that break. Got some time to relax. It was not exactly a relaxing few weeks for me as I was covering this championship run for the Memphis Grizzlies. There was an awful lot I thought to take away from just Summer League in general. And I want to go through some of the roster here and talk about some players specifically. We can get into the championship game, or I can discuss some of that. Obviously a disappointing result for the Grizzlies, but I want to start with this. 2 things I noted that don't relate to individual players that I found notable from Summer League. The first, They played their guys. They played them all, right? Like this is a time of year where teams choose to be cautious and teams choose to handle this different ways. Players get shut down. The Grizzlies didn't do that. The Grizzlies said that they wanted to go into Summer League and they wanted to take this as an opportunity to start to build a culture that's focused on winning. Well, guess what? In order to build a culture focused on winning, you have to play the best players on the floor. And they did that, and that's not what happened at the end of last year. It was part of what was so frustrating and so miserable to watch. I don't think anybody's naive enough to think that they weren't, I'm sure the guys that were on the floor were trying to win, but the guys weren't always on the floor. And so to have the best players on the Summer League roster available and playing in the games and playing all the way through trying to win, that was notable to me. I thought that was that was refreshing in a way to watch that at Summer League. Did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I did a local radio segment yesterday on Jeffrey Wright's show, and I picked my theme song as I used to do every day on the Jeff Calkins show. And I usually pick songs I like. In this case, I picked a song I didn't like. I actually don't like at all, but I felt it fit. I'd used a Whole New World from the Aladdin soundtrack in honor of the Memphis Grizzlies, who in only a few months have gone from doing everything they reasonably could to lose regular season games to doing everything they reasonably could to try to win Summer League games. It's a little bit of a sea change. I think a welcome one, an appropriate one. They do feed one into the other in terms of what you can do to rebuild. Losing had its advantages then, and now, to your point, they're trying to build that winning culture. They didn't play everybody they had because it's interesting because Walter Clayton was on the roster, didn't play at all.
Those are different. Those are injuries, right?
Yeah. It was some kind of injury situation. Kareem Lopez dealing with the injury, only played like 11 minutes. But to your point, the guys they had available, there was the last game in Utah, they basically said everybody. But even in Vegas, even on a back-to-back, they played guys. And Boozer played the full run other than the one rest game or whatever, which was unlike the other top picks. And to me, the real interesting one is Cedric Howard, who he was not the highest drafted second year player there at 11. There were a few other players who were top 10 picks, Trey Johnson, Yegor Demon, Kamen Malawach, but he was the most established. He was first team all rookie. The other 4 guys who were first team all rookie were not playing Summer League. And so Cedric Howard not only was playing as the, probably the most, certified, established second-year player to play Summer League, He played the whole thing. It wasn't like you play one or two games and they shut you down. They weren't doing the too good for summer league, which is this phrase that people. It's a phrase people say because it's a phrase people say. I find it kind of annoying because these are all young players, and no matter how good you are, you have stuff to work on. It's just a choice whether you want to work on them or in summer league or not. The idea that you're too good for summer league, you're not too good to play and work on stuff if you think that's advantageous to you to work on stuff. And so the Grizzlies took it very seriously. And I think while they were obviously trying to win all the games and they came up, a couple minutes short in the end, the real message there wasn't like the value of winning summer league games. I think the real driving force was the value of getting reps together among players who were going to be on the main roster. And by the time you got to the end, basically that was everybody. I don't know, Tyler Burton played like 2 minutes or whatever, in that last game, but they were basically playing the guys who were going to be or could be on the roster, main roster or two-way guys. And they were playing those guys. And I feel bad for the Zach Clevelands of the world. You didn't get a lot of run for the Grizzlies Summer League team because they were giving their minutes to the players who they're going to carry into the regular season.
Yeah, I think there's more to that. To your point about playing the guys, Cam Boozer played 35 minutes in the championship game.
Yeah.
You know how many times Jaren Jackson Jr. played 35 minutes last season in a game that didn't go to overtime? Twice, right? And that was a 48-minute game. This is a 40-minute game in Summer League, and Cam Boozer's playing 35 minutes. I love it. I mean, I love it. It was, throwing caution to the wind, if you want to call that, say it that way. And also to your point about, getting guys reps that will actually be on the roster, and being quote-unquote too good for Summer League, they played 2 fourth-year players, Taylor Hendricks and Olivier Maxence-Prosper, and they played them a lot. And look, those 2 guys, we can get into them a little later. I don't know if they had great Summer Leagues, but at least they had the courage to throw them out there and see what they could do even in a 4th season, right? Or even going into a 4th season and getting them, opportunity this summer that they otherwise may not have when we get to the regular season. So I would applaud the way that the Grizzlies handled Summer League, especially in this scenario where they're trying to start over. They're trying to, hit refresh on this. At some point, maybe by the time you're listening to this, I'll have a Summer League recap out. And the way I think I phrased it was like, you're pressing the restart button, but it was almost like they ripped that restart button off the wall because this feels like an entirely different thing. When they got to Summer League and they played it out. I don't know. Do you make anything of them playing these shortened rotations in Summer League? Like, is that any?
It's interesting because 2 different things I think got conflated last year. The shorter stints and bigger rotations got conflated. They're actually separate things. Playing a 10, 11, 12-man rotation and playing guys in 4-minute stints with quick subs. Those are separate decisions, and they generally did both of those things a lot last year. In Summer League, they basically did one of those things. I think the quick substitution pattern was happening. And I think that's something that Thomas Slow wants to do and getting guys accustomed to that. They did tighten the rotation. They weren't playing everybody on the roster, on the Summer League roster, as we noted. They were focusing on the guys who were going to be with the team going forward. But I think that's the point. The point wasn't that out of some matter of strategy they cut it down to an 8-9 man rotation. I think as a matter of strategy, they cut it down to the guys who matter in the.
That's what I was going to say. Camp. Because if you factor in Walter Clayton Jr. and Kareem Lopez into this,
then they would have been playing the 10 and right.
I don't know. I do think that there's a chance that they could go with a shorter rotation, but yeah, if you were factoring those 2 players in, maybe it ends up.
I will be
being
very surprised if a relatively healthy Grizzlies team in the regular season is not playing 10, 11, maybe even 12 on a lot of nights. Yeah. Just given the makeup of the roster.
All right, let's get into some of these players. Let's start with Cam Boozer. The 2 things that stand out to me from Cam Boozer, watching Cam Boozer this summer. One is that he was as advertised, I think, as a prospect. He played the way that you would expect him to play. He showed the skills that were, celebrated when he was a draft prospect. And the other thing is that if this is the guy that's the centerpiece player for the Grizzlies moving forward, Grizzlies basketball is just going to look a lot different than it has in past years. And that's okay, right? And we talked about that on this podcast before, which is that, the brand of basketball may not be quite as explosive as it was before, but people like winners. And I think Cam Boozer, if you look at the totality of Summer League, he was just named ESPN's MVP of Summer League. He impacted winning. He did a lot of things to help the team win. Even when he wasn't scoring the ball well, he was very impactful. If you go look at some of the composite box score stats, he was tremendous in terms of game impact. And I think the only player better than Boozer at Summer League in the composite box score sort of statistics was Debansa, who was the number 1 overall pick. And so just a great campaign from him. One thing I noticed in that championship game, which you haven't gotten to quite yet, Chris, and I would encourage you to watch and see what you think, is when the team was down by 3, this is after Boozer had already missed a couple shots that would have been the go-ahead basket. The team's down by 3. They call a timeout. They're trying to get a play set up to hit the 3 to tie the game to send it to overtime. Boozer's the player who just turned 19 years old who's commanding that huddle during that timeout. The cameras pan over. You can see them. They got the shot of the Grizzlies bench, and it's Boozer looking up and down the bench, talking to the guys. He's smiling. He's clapping. He's being encouraging. I don't make nothing of that. I think that they need some form of leadership. They have some veteran players, but they don't have a ton of veteran players. And if this guy is going to be the centerpiece of your franchise, that's what you want from him. And so I thought that was, even though he missed the shots that frankly he should have made at the end of the game that might have won the Grizzlies a Summer League title, I think he really showed himself well over the course of the 8 games that he played, and he was, as advertised, exactly what you would have expected him to be over that stretch. Do you have any initial takeaways as we leave Summer League on Boozer?
Yeah, I mean, the 2 things I was most struck by were probably the versatility and the decision making. I mean, the main image I have of Boozer in Summer League, and this is a fleeting moment that probably, generally didn't get a lot of notice, but for some reason it sticks in my head. It may have been in the Houston game, the next to last game. There was a play where he set the screen, and then he rolls, and he gets the ball sort of on the short roll there, like around the free throw line. And that's a spot where there's an instant decision to make, right? Do you throw the lob to your center? Do you kick it out to on one of the wings to a 3-point shooter? Or you take shooting yourself? There's a split-second decision to be made with lots of options there. He throws the lob to the center. If Zach Edey's there, that's a dunk. It was Taylor Hendricks. It gets broken up. The ball lands in Boozer's hand. It immediately goes out to the wing to an open 3-point shooter. And his ability to process quickly and make decisions, and the fact that he's a threat to do just about anything as a passer, as a shooter, as a whatever from a front court spot. The Grizzlies haven't had a player like that since Marc Gasol, really. Steven Adams was you could run a lot of offense through him as a hub, with that, the bounce passes of Desmond Bane and the dribble handoffs and all that, but he wasn't going to score. And Jaren Jackson Jr., if the ball touched his hands, he was looking to score. He did not have the feel to pass. And to have a front court player who is a triple threat guy to run offense through and will make decisions for your basketball team, which is going to be a totally different look than the Grizzlies have had, since Marc Gasol was there. Boozer, I'll note, had a minimum of 3 assists in every Summer League game from the power forward spot. And so I think that's the indicator of sort of the playmaking there. It's funny, if you run his numbers, Vegas and Utah, if you combine them, he averaged 29 minutes. I'm doing this from memory, but I did the math yesterday. It's 18, 7, and 4, and 53% on 2s and 41% on 3s. And if you told me the end of the season that's his regular season stat line, that sounds about right. I think maybe the rebounds might be a little bit higher. I would hope the 2-point shooting is a little higher. We'll see in the regular season. But he shot 41% from 3 on 4 or 5 attempts a game, and I think that's going to be real. I mean, generally, Summer League 3-point shooting, I don't take that seriously. But when you tie it into players' previous track record, right? It sort of matches up. And so with Boozer, I just think he's going to be a day one all around player. I don't know how much of a scorer he will be. Like, I think he could be a 20-point guy. I don't think he's going to be a 27-point guy ever, right? But I think the totality of what he does is interesting. The defensive stuff was interesting to me because it's funny, he and Coward are sort of inverses of each other a little bit. Boozer's the power forward whose most of his activity was generating steals, and Coward is the wing perimeter player who most of his activity is generating blocks. They're sort of the inverse there. I think Boozer, you saw some of the issues he's going to have defensively in terms of the verticality defending in the paint and in terms of lateral speed on the perimeter. But I think you also saw enough in Summer League to see some of the skills he has that will mitigate some of that. The strength he'll have, banging bodies in the post, and the quick, strong hands to try to generate steals and deflections when he's having to guard on the perimeter. I just think the versatility was really, really interesting with him.
Yeah. He doesn't, I wrote this, he doesn't have the game that's great for casual basketball conversation. Right. He doesn't have the game that's like, to use the cliche, the water cooler at work, type of game. Because you're not going to show up the next day and you say, did you see that Cam Boozer dunk last night? No, you're going to say, did you see that pocket pass that he threw, when he caught the ball on the short roll and hit Cedric Coward going to the basket for a wide open layup? And it's like, it's instead of these super explosive plays, it's the death by 1,000 paper cuts type of thing, like a guy who's just going to make the smart play and he's going to make them in excess over and over and over again on a basketball court. And that's what sort of drives his impact on winning and his impact on games. And the versatility did show. The skip passes will never get old. Like, it's just so great. It's beautiful to watch when he catches the ball on the perimeter and he looks to the post and the defense shifts and he immediately throws it over everybody's head to the weak side for a wide open three. And he and Coward seem to already have a really good rapport. I don't remember if it was the Houston game or the Golden State game. I believe it was the Houston game. No, I think it was actually the Golden State game where, I mean, 4 of Coward's buckets were wide open threes, and they all were on assists from Cam Boozer that resulted in those threes or a score at the rim, I think. I mean, those two worked in unison pretty good over the course of Summer League, and that was great. I mean, to not only pump the tires, if we're going to talk about some of the stuff that he can work on, I think you're right with the 2-point percentage. You'd like to see that come up. I did kind of go back and look at top picks and how they performed in their first Summer League, and it's very typical for players to shoot a little bit of a lower percentage in their first Summer League. They're trying to force it. I mean, Cooper Flagg was in the 40s. Cade Cunningham was in the 40s. Paolo Banchero was in the low 40s. I'm not worried about that at all. I do think there will be maybe a little bit of an adjustment for him, not with the speed of the game, but with some of the size and athleticism that he's going to face on a game-to-game basis. I think there is going to be an adjustment to that. I'm not worried about that adjustment. I think he'll adjust perfectly fine to that, but it might take a little bit of time. And so that sort of struck me too. What else do you have on Boozer before we move on?
Well, I don't think he's going to go over the top of the defense I don't think he's going to get as much easy stuff at the rim as like a Caleb Wilson or AJ DeBanza is going to be it, because of the athleticism questions. And then the inverse of that is he'll get a shot blocked a little bit more, and like it won't look good. That was true in college. He was the best player in college basketball, and you watched him enough, you see him get a shot blocked a lot. That's just sort of part of it with him. I think, if you were basing your evaluation of a player on how much of a bucket getter they are, then he wouldn't have been the 3rd pick in the draft. It's the totality of his game that makes him the prospect that he is. He's a good scorer, but he's not a great scorer. But the scoring, plus the rebounding, plus the playmaking and passing, plus the leadership, plus the 3-point shooting, plus it's the cumulative impact of it all. I'm not really looking for him to be like, I know, they went to him at the end of the Golden State game, but for the most part, I don't see his future as being everybody clear out, Boozer's going to get a bucket. I just don't know if that's going to be his game. He also just turned 19 a week ago, so who knows?
Yeah, clearly he's a very smart player.
Yeah.
who understands the game well. He fouled a lot in the matchups where he was against the more athletic bigs. I think he hit in 3 of the 4 Yaxel Wilson, or 2 out of the 3 Yaxel Wilson games. He had 4 fouls. But he's smart enough player to where that, obviously it doesn't matter in Summer League when you get 10, but it will matter in the regular season if you pick up some early ones. And I think there were some moments where the defense could have been better from Cameron Boozer. But overall, I mean, how do you not give the guy an A plus for the way he played in Summer League? He did everything that you would have expected him to do. It was a great performance. I think the Grizzlies are going to leave Las Vegas feeling great about their future, great about his individual future. And he gets a little bulletin board material from Yaxel Lenderborg, who said the refs saved him, which is just right. It was a wild comment. But it should serve as some motivation going into the regular season and training camp. On to Cedric Coward. Cedric did not. Here's the way I as I was thinking about Cedric Coward's Summer League, I went back to some of what we were saying at the end of the regular season last year, where it was like, you look around, the rotation's littered with 10-day contracts. You got guys in and out of the rotation. Ced was playing in a lot of those games, and it felt like a real opportunity for him to maybe force it a little bit more and force the issue and take more of the shots and be more aggressive that way. And it never really felt like he pushed that all too much, and he still sort of tried to play within the game without forcing the issue. Felt like Summer League was going to be a redo, and then maybe he forced it a little too much early on in Salt Lake City and in Las Vegas. He didn't shoot the ball particularly well. He felt like he was settling for shots in the sake of getting some shots up. He got challenged by the coaching staff. And then the big bonus is that he responded really well, saved his best performances for the end of Summer League. I thought his championship game against Golden State was the best game that he had played. He went 5 for 5 from 3. He took great shots. He worked well in unison with Boozer. He rebounded the ball like he always does. That's still his best skill. And the good news is that's an effort, stat, and that will continue. That's not an area where he still needs to develop. You just hope the offensive game comes along with it. And I think he showed that not only can he be sort of the dominant force that everyone expected him to be at Summer League, but the fact that he had to work to get to that was a positive to me and not necessarily a negative. And I thought he finished Summer League really strong, and you feel good about him too going into the training camp in the regular season.
Yeah, I was almost more interested in Cedric Howard in Summer League than I was in Boozer even. It's interesting. You go. I think back to one of the first conversations we had about Cedric Howard, standing in the hallway at Belmont University nearly a year ago in Nashville, training camp, talking to Homa Cicelo, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said something like, the coaches and I have been talking about Cedric, and we all think he's going to be good, but we're wondering like what kind of good is he going to be? Like he sort of started writing off this list of different kinds of players he could be, and how it's sort of going to be fun to sort of figure out what it was. One of the things he talked about then was the idea of Coward as like a secondary rim protector and defender around the rim, which you don't think about as with a 6'5" guy. And that really popped in Vegas, that physicality around the rim. I think he came into Vegas with the idea of being more aggressive on both ends and playing hyper aggressive. And good things came out of that, bad things came out of that. But I think it was the right approach. It was getting out of your comfort zone and forcing yourself to try to impact the game more. And Vegas is, for one of the cliches is exploring the studio space, right? They let him explore it a little bit. I think some of the block, I mean, he had emphatic blocks. One went up with 2 hands and rejection. The rebounding and the shot blocking and that kind of stuff I thought was really great to see. One of the weird things, odd things about Coward is that his height is guard height at 6'5", but his frame and his length and his strength is more small forward. And I think his game is more of a small forwards game. I think when he's trying to make more than one dribble to create offense for himself or others, it becomes an adventure. And that's something that you can hone and work on over time. Jaren Jackson Jr. got much better at that over time. And I think that's something that he was trying to work on there. I'm not convinced that's the ultimate destination for his game, and I'm not convinced it needs to be. I think, if he develops as a guy who can really has a better handle and can make things happen off the dribble, that would be great. But I think he's got, you didn't see it a lot in Vegas from what I saw, but he's still got this go-to shot ability, which is the simple play, the one dribble play, the one hard dribble, use your strength to bump off a defender, rise up for a soft 12-footer. That's a kind of go-to shot. He's got that. I think he's going to be a three-point shooter. If you add it all up, Utah and Vegas ended up at 38% on high volume. I mean, that it was lower than that early, but he finished strong in those 3 games.
He made 9 of his last 15 threes.
Yeah, so he finished strong, but 38% is sort of what I'm looking for him next season, because I think with his form, he should be a good three-point shooter. That should be a meaningful part of his game. So I think he can be a high-level, a pretty meaningful scorer without being as ball dominant as he was early in Summer League, via the three-point shooting, via the simple scores, via transition, via all that. He also, Coward, it wasn't every game with him because it wasn't like this in Utah, but in Vegas, he had 3+ assists in every game in Vegas. And I think he's a good connective passer. He's not necessarily a great on-ball playmaker, but he's a good connective passer. He makes good passes within the context of team basketball. And so I'm coming out of this Vegas, I'm even higher on Coward as that kind of player than I already was, maybe. It's the guy who can be a physical defender, physical presence, who can be a meaningful scorer, and be a connective playmaker, but a guy who's probably going to slot between a higher usage guy in the front court, which is now Cameron Boozer, and a higher usage guy in the backcourt, which I think for now is Ty Jerome, and that may be a different player in 2 years or whatever. I don't know if I see Coward as ever being the guy who himself is going to be the high usage guy, but we'll see. Unlike Boozer, he is not 19; he's 22, 23. But the seriousness with which he played, the way he honed his game over time after the super aggressive start, and just what he showed in terms of the physicality and the shot making, and I take a lot of positives out of it. The thing that he was working on that is out of his comfort zone, I think is what he needed to be working on. But I'm not convinced that is where his game is going to go.
Yeah, I would just repeat something I said last week when Keith was on, and that is his shots are going to come and go. You're going to have stretches where you make shots. You're going to have stretches where you miss shots. This is a player that scored 27 points in a real NBA game in his third ever game. Right. This is a player that is capable of scoring the ball, and I'm not going to sweat over a few Summer League performances where he didn't shoot the ball great. With that being said, he finishes Las Vegas averaging 19 points per game. There's only 2 other players, as far as I could go back, in Grizzlies history in Las Vegas Summer League that averaged more points than Cedric Coward did during his run in Las Vegas. It's Desmond Bane and Scottie Pippen Jr. So, pretty good from Cedric Coward. I think the way that he closed it out, the way he played at the end, I think he was the leader of the team. He and Boozer were clear leaders of this Summer League team. I think you're pretty happy with the way he finished out. Let's move onward. We can go a little quicker through some of these guys now. Yep. Carson Cooper, I thought he played great in the championship. He had 16 points. The Grizzlies were finding him on cuts to the rim. This will be out in the story if you want to go read what Carson had to say about it, but I'll just quickly recap. He actually was a really talented soccer goalie for a long time and had the chance to go, play soccer in college as a goalie, but changed his mind and ended up playing in prep school with a very notable name from a local college. I'll leave it at that. You can go read to figure out who it is. And changed his mind and decided to play basketball. But I do think you can see, he talks about how, all that time he spent playing soccer and sort of getting the late start on basketball that he did, that soccer helped him get the quick feet defensively to be able to stay in front of people and he has really good reaction time. So I think as a break in case of emergency fourth center on a two-way contract, he's a good player to have go develop in the G League for a little bit, and then if you need him and you need him to fill some spot minutes for the Grizzlies over the course of the regular season, he will be capable of doing that without being a defensive liability, which I think is probably the main priority for a fourth big. So I thought he played pretty well in Summer League. He didn't have a ton of opportunity. Obviously, he wasn't the first focus in the front court, but I think you're leaving Summer League feeling pretty good about how he looked.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that. He has not signed a contract yet, but the understanding is my understanding is he is an understanding with the Grizzlies that he'll be on one of those two ways. And I think if you're handicapping the Grizzlies two-way situation, he is the guy who is most certain to be on a two-way for the Memphis Grizzlies. Because Javon Small, who we'll talk about, in theory, could move up depending on what happened. Mm-hmm. Jemai Mashek could move down or off depending on what happens. But Cooper, I just think, is going to be one of the three two-ways.
Yeah, I was going to get to Javon Small, the other two-way player that was on the Grizzlies Summer League roster. He played really well in the games where the Grizzlies won, in dominant fashion, which I think is no surprise given the fact that he was really the only ball-dominant guard that they had available without Walter Clayton Jr. healthy. And so when he was great, the Grizzlies were great. He was pretty good in the championship game. He had 8 assists but didn't have his best scoring night. I thought it was a little up and down for Javon Small, but the highs were really high. He looked pretty good in some of those games. To me, he's established himself as like an NBA level talent. Like I think he will be on a roster somewhere, and I think he'll probably be on the Grizzlies roster. But he is in this logjam in the backcourt that eventually they're going to have to figure out, because when you think about guys who are going to play point guard, we really could name 5 players, and then you have to factor in Richie Saunders, who would be a 6th, who's more of a combo guard, but they got to find a space to sign him. So it'd be really fascinating to see what they decide to do, because they are going to have to cut down here. And I think Small should be, whether he stays on the two-way contract this season or they find a place for him on the main roster, I think he showed enough at Summer League to where he deserves that opportunity. Clayton is interesting because, we talked about this off the podcast yesterday. He still has 2 more years on the contract, and it's not unheard of for a rookie to play, especially a guard, to play bad their rookie season and then come back and prove to be a perfectly good NBA player. And so I think they have some decisions to make with him. But do you have any thoughts on Small and then Clayton?
Yeah, I mean, I think the lead with Small is a simple one, and you said it, and it's meaningful because he is about to be a second year two-way contract player who was a late second round pick. Those players tend to not pan out, and he looks he's not a perfect player at all, but he looks absolutely like an NBA quality backup point guard. Like right now, he could be somebody's backup point guard. And you're right, he's on a team that has like 5 good backup point guards. That's part of the issue.
So let's go through them. We have Small, we have Pippen, Clayton, Cam Spencer, and Ty Jerome.
Right.
There's
Ty
5.
Jerome was 6th man of the year finalist.
D'Angelo Russell,
by definition, was a backup.
D'Angelo Russell's technically,
right, for now. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot.
So yeah. So that's a lot. At least one of those is going to get cleared out. D'Angelo Russell, I think, gets cleared out. I feel like they need to clear out one more. With Javon Small, again, in isolation, don't make much about 3-point percentages in Summer League, but when you add it to the larger sample, college, last year in the NBA, again in Summer League, if you keep shooting the three at like 40%, maybe you're a 40% 3-point shooter. And so there was that. Another play I remember from Summer League, and maybe it was a Houston game. Maybe that's because it's fresh in my memory. But there was a play where he was on the finishing end of a fast break alley-oop from Cedric Howard, like above the rim. So this guy can knock down a three. He can also finish above the rim. If you look at the numbers, the assist turnover numbers were really good for him in Summer League. I think that overstates the case if you watch the games in terms of the playmaking. I don't know if he is the purest point guard, and he's certainly not the most creative playmaker point guard. I think it's hard for a lot of people when you have the ball to modulate the when to score, when to set up, and to find the right balance. I think that's hard for anybody at the NBA level. I think that's something he's still working on clearly. But, I don't know if his ceiling is higher than backup ever, but I think he's already a good backup point guard. And it's just a matter of the Grizzlies trying to sort all this out. And they do have the luxury of bringing him back on the two-way. It is a team option. They can bring him back on the two-way. They could do that to start the season. That's probably still most likely while things sort. But he's a guy who's ready to play now.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like at some point he's going to get an opportunity in the regular season, and this is going to be about taking advantage of that chance, because Ty Jerome does have an injury history, right? It's hard to imagine he's going to play 82. And so that's going to bump everybody up in the rotation. And I think if you were to try to rank those guards in terms of who's most likely to get the opportunities, I mean, I think you have a hard time not putting Small third, right? At least on that list. So it is, it's going to be an interesting offseason, interesting training camp to see where he ends up on the roster, but then also, in terms of the rotation. Let's talk Omax and Taylor Hendricks.
Yeah, and I think pairing them makes sense, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what I did in my story that I wrote. I paired the two together. So you've got two players, both who got a lot of opportunity in Summer League. Hendricks played one more game than Omax because of the hard fall that he took. Hendricks shot just 37% from the floor and averaged 3.6 rebounds in 24 minutes as a starter, so not great there. And Prosper started shooting the ball pretty well from three and was able to get some of those production numbers up as a result of some 3-point success. But he finishes with 14.4 points per game on 44% shooting and 4.2 rebounds. These are fourth-year guys that the Grizzlies put on the roster. And I don't know, to me it feels like one of these guys is going to find their way into the rotation when regular season games come around, but I'm not sure that both will. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think if the Grizzlies are fully healthy, I suspect neither would necessarily if they're playing 10. But to your point, Edie's going to miss games, etc.
Right.
Adding Quentin Post, I think pushes, because Taylor Hendricks basically started at center for a lot of these Summer League games. I think if the Grizzlies had not signed Quentin Post, he would have been penciled in as basically the third string center, but in addition to wherever he would be on the power forward depth chart. And I think that pushes him down to fourth and makes it less likely that they need him for minutes there. When I did my offseason player rankings coming out of last season, I think I had Prosper one spot ahead of Hendricks, and I sort of still feel that way. I think they're both nominally fours, but Hendricks is a 4-5, and I think Prosper should be a 4-3. And he got played out of position for the Grizzlies last year during the regular season, given the injuries and given the tanking. And you saw him mostly starting at the 3 in Summer League, back at his natural spot. So in terms of Hendricks, in theory, he's a 3 and rebound power forward. I'm not sure he's great at either of those things, though. He takes a lot of threes. He shot more than 50%, maybe more than 60%. I'd have to do the math. But the majority of the shots he took in Vegas were from 3-point range, even as a 6'9", 6'10", big. He didn't make a lot of them. I think he's a viable 3-point shooter. He hasn't proven to be a good one necessarily. And he's a viable rebounder, but he's not like Danny Fortson or whatever out there. So I'm struggling to find the there with him. I think clearly the major injury he had early in his NBA career, has robbed him a little bit of the athleticism he's trying to get back now that he's coming back from that injury. With Prosper, I think there's just a little bit more juice there. And I think even much more than Coward, there was too much Omax happening in Summer League, but that's a byproduct of being a fourth-year guy playing on a Summer League team. And so that puts you in position where you're having the ball a lot. He was hunting for shots in a way that I don't think they would want him to in the regular season. So I think there were times where there was too much Omax, but as an energy guy, I think he showed that he's a real 3-point shooter now. He was not his first 2 NBA seasons. It was sort of a thing that popped last year in year 3. You wonder, is that real or not? And while the percentage wasn't great in Vegas, it was okay. And he took a lot of them. He generated a lot of them. I think you saw that like he's a real threat as a shooter. Defensively, I would like to see a little bit more from him. He fits the profile of the bigger athletic wing who can guard a lot of guys. He didn't generate a lot in terms of steals, in terms of blocks. He didn't look like a guy who was just really going to shut anyone down. He was more just okay. But I think it's a positive presence, high energy guy who can run the floor, who can spot up from three, who can defend at least at an average level. I think there's a lot of utility for that. So I feel a little bit more positive about Prosper as a back end of the roster, spot minute guy than I do Hendricks given the makeup of the roster right now.
I do too, and I think you put it well when you said there's just a little bit more juice. There's just a little bit more juice to Prosper's game than there is to Hendricks' game. And I would echo what you said about the shooting. I mean, he shot 40% from three last year. I don't know if he's a 40% three-point shooter. Sure. I think Summer League maybe shows that. Small sample. Right. But to me, he's more likely to... But if he's
wide open and the ball goes out to him, you want him to take that shot.
He's going to take it, and he's more likely to make it than Hendricks at this point. So I would echo everything you had to say. I think those two, they belong to be kind of grouped together here as we discuss Summer League. That's all I've got in terms of player notes. Do you have any other player notes?
Well, there's Meshack, who is, right now he's on one of those two ways, and they have a decision to make because they sort of have four players potentially for three of those spots in Small, Cooper, Meshack, and Richie Saunders, and they have a decision to make if they want to have all four as part of the team, and I think they do. Then is one of those guys going up to the main roster? Is one of those guys gonna start out the season like Meshack did last year, where he was not on a two-way but was still like with the hustle and part of the Grizzlies operation? They have a decision to make there. With Meshack, you can see the outline of what's interesting to the Grizzlies with Meshack. He's a good defensive player. He's a good, solid defensive player. He's also a disruptive defensive player. And he's maybe a little bit better shooter than he showed in college. I think he shot 40% from three in Summer League, but it wasn't very high volume. And so, and I don't know how old he is. He's probably like 23 or whatever already. And so how much do you want to invest in what is currently a low volume 3-and-D, guard wing, right? Can he be Lou Dort or not? And how much time are you going to spend trying to find out if he could be a Lou Dort kind of player? I don't know the answer to that. I'm not trying to lead with that. I think that's a question the Grizzlies have to ask themselves. Can the shooting keep improving both from a volume and an accuracy standpoint enough that you can afford to have him on the floor and take advantage of what he gives you defensively? And how much more time is it worth investing trying to cultivate that kind of player? I think that's an interesting question for them to ask organizationally.
Would you agree or disagree that maybe this is a little bit of a Walter Clayton Jr. question? Like, how do they feel about him? Because if they want to see that through, and he's got 2 more years on his contract, and they want to keep him there, then it just seems much more likely that Javon Small is going to stay on a 2-way contract. If that is the case, then they need to find a place for Richie Saunders. And so I don't know. There's a number of different ways it could go, but I do think that they're all tied together.
With Clayton, and I wrote this day of trade. If you go back to the column I wrote about the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade the day it happened, I wrote this on the day of the trade. I don't believe the Grizzlies were targeting Walter Clayton in that trade or trying to get Walter Clayton in that trade. I think they were targeting the draft picks and the trade exception, and they took the contracts back Utah would send to match contracts, and that ended up being who it was. I don't know what their scout on him was in the draft last year. So to me, it's a real open question how invested they are. I mean, they have him on the team, right? So you're invested in the guy on your team. But they went out and wanted Javon Small. They went out and wanted Cam Spencer. All right? I just don't know what the level of internal investment is in Clayton. Is the guy shows up in a trade? Like Chris Murray just showed up in a trade. What are they doing with him? And they just have a lot of crowd at that spot. So I just don't know about Clayton.
To the degree that an IOU exists in the NBA, which I'm not sure it does, maybe outside of Gary Trent.
Yeah.
Meshack has one because they put that guy, they put him through the ringer last year, playing him minutes at center, being a part of the the race to the bottom last year, across the NBA. Like, they put him in some tough spots. He didn't really get a chance to show what he's capable of doing at a position where he would actually play typically. I feel like he's been put in a tough spot, and he was patient with the team, starting in the G League before coming over on the two-way contract after they used a draft pick on him. I hope he gets a chance, and if it's not in Memphis, I hope he gets a chance somewhere.
I mean, my guess would be that Meshack stays in this two-way, and one of two things happens. Either a spot gets opened up on the main roster, in which case there's a decision about Javon Small or Richie Saunders for that spot, or unlike with Jemai Meshack, where I had a good sense of where it was going, I don't know this on Richie Saunders at all. But you wonder if there's some understanding with Saunders of maybe he starts out on last year's Meshack plan, right? Where, you're rehabbing as part of the team and we'll move you up onto a contract, two-way or main roster later on. I don't know. But clearly they had that understanding with Meshack a year ago. And I suspect when they took Saunders where they took him, there was an understanding. I don't know what that understanding is. That understanding, maybe we're going to clear a main roster spot. The understanding, maybe we're going to clear a two-way spot. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure there was some level of communication or understanding about there's a certain path that we could go on with you because you're rehabbing right now.
Last thing before we move on to the non-basketball stuff, I just wanted to say it is kind of a real bummer for Eric Schmidt that they didn't win the championship, because I think that comes with some notoriety. This is a guy that was 35 when Summer League started, just turned 36, I believe, and was part of like the young group of coaches that the franchise had under Taylor Jenkins, and like Mike Noyes, who was also part of that developmental group. He got hired away by the Spurs, and so some of other teams around the league came and took some of the young coaching talent away from the Grizzlies, and he was one that stuck around, and they stuck with him even when they turned the assistant coaching staff over before the last season of Taylor Jenkins. So he's been with the team for a while, started as a video coordinator, so this seemed like it was a pretty big opportunity for him, and he did a pretty nice job. And Eric Schmidt was like, man, he was the guy grinding, going overseas everywhere with Jaren Jackson Jr. He's poured a lot of time into the Grizzlies, and so a little bit of a bummer that he will end up not getting the recognition for winning the championship, but just 36 years old, he's still very young in the coaching ranks, and so that was a big opportunity for him at Summer League. So I wanted to note that. Okay, there's more to life than basketball. Chris, we both have seen The Odyssey. We will not do – can we do a spoilers-free review of The Odyssey?
Yeah.
Okay, you go first.
We were not spoiled the thousands and thousands of year-old text.
Yeah.
It's out there in terms of the plot. I thought it was great. My whole family, we went to see it last night. We saw it not in IMAX. We saw it in 70 millimeter, which I won't get into the technical details of that, but that's a better picture quality image than a 35 millimeter. It looked great. I'm not someone who worships everything Christopher Nolan does at all. I like an awful lot of his movies, but I don't love them all. I think this is definitely one of his better ones. And it's just to me, it's a feat of large scale filmmaking in the way that I want it to be. It is not, I mean, there are effects going on. That's not a real Cyclops or whatever, but it is not a lot of computer generated. It's real cameras on real locations with real actors and real water and real sunlight. And you can feel that sort of real world quality in it. And just as a matter of craft, and good art's about more than craft, and this is very good art, but just as a matter of craft, it's a really impressive achievement. And I'm really glad that at least somebody's getting to make movies like this. Okay,
I'm going to give you a much less technical, way more dumbed down review. I thought it was great. I think for a movie that's supposed to be an epic, it was very epic, and that was the part that was, the most enjoyable about it. My problem isn't with the movie, it's with the book. It's with the story itself, which is that, it's like, here's Odysseus, he's on his journey home, and he's doing this thing. He's fighting a Cyclops. He's fighting the next thing. He's fighting a witch. He's running away from this thing. And so for a movie that was 2 hours and 50 minutes long, even with that, it still kind of felt like it was choppy a little bit at times, but that's, again, not the fault of the movie. That's just the story. And so, I don't know, maybe maybe that was the only complaint I had. I thought it was great, though, and totally worth going to see in the theater.
Yeah, I read the Iliad in high school, which I remember liking. I don't know if I ever read the Odyssey. Maybe I read, selections from it. And so a couple things about the movie, and I don't know, one of these things I'm pretty sure is conforms to the text. It's sort of what you're talking about. And one sort of I'm not as sure about. But I think in the text, it's not a straight narrative. It's told as in the form of storytelling. And so you get that in the movie. These are not really spoilers, but you get, when you're seeing things happening, you're seeing them being told to you. It's in some sections it's this character, the bard, who's in the dining hall in the present day telling the story of Odysseus, and in some scenes it's Odysseus on the beach with Calypso remembering and retelling the story of what happened to him. And then it's his son Telemachus goes to visit the king Menelaus. Menelaus is telling him the story of what happened, and then Odysseus comes home and he's telling the story to his wife. And it's this sense of like stories being told and retold in the movie. And I think the choppiness is in some ways embedded in that. It's not telling a straight narrative of what happened. It's a series of retellings of things that have happened. And that worked for me. But I know what you're saying about that. There's a lot packed in. If you wanted to really like run through the tape on every scenario, it would have been longer than the 3 hours
right.
it was.
There are movies that are extremely long, but they don't feel long because it's all it's a slow build to the end. This is not a slow build movie. It's just not, right? It's like straight into it, which some people like. I think I might prefer the slow build a little bit more. But anyway, I thought it was great. Totally worth going to see in the theater. Go check it out. I think it's breaking records and stuff. Chris, you would know better than me. So
I believe so.
Yeah. Only other topic, non-basketball, before we get out of here, and I'm only bringing this up because I think you and our producer Natalie here will have very different answers to this. I was laughing this week because my daughter turned 8 months old, and my wife said, "Can you believe she's 8 months old? Oh my gosh, I only have 4 months to plan her first birthday party."
I saw her post.
And I laughed at that. And Natalie said she saw her post on Instagram. I'm like, 4 months? That's so much time to plan a first birthday party. Did you go all out for your son's first birthday party, Natalie? No? Oh, man.
Well, we had a party.
She wants to have a big party. She wants to have like a theme and all of that.
We had, during our family beach trip, we had a birthday party for my nephew, Jack Casey, who turned 1.
There we go.
We had a 1-year-old birthday party, and then they came home and had a Memphis birthday party. This is something, you and I have talked about this. This is a generation gap thing between me and you. We've talked about this in other contexts. It's a social media, it's a post-social media thing, the Instagrammable life. The idea of the big party for a 1-year-old's birthday, the idea of the gender reveal, all of this stuff, I think, was not a part of my life as a young adult. It's become more a part of people's lives because people want to display these moments in their lives to other people via social media. That, to me, that's where a lot of that stuff came from.
Natalie says she has a different take. Unfortunately, she still doesn't have a microphone.
I'll just shout it. The party is more for you and your wife than it is the baby, to celebrate that you've gotten through this very difficult first year.
100%. Natalie says the 1-year-old birthday party is for you, for the parents, not for this. Obviously not for the kid. Kids have no idea what's going on. But it's not only. But my point is that it's not only for the parents. It is for the parents to display to other people, to perform their life for the public.
Beers will be had at my child's first birthday party. Okay, that will be something that is part of it. That is a celebration of the adults, not by my child, but by all the adults that are there. There will be you're right. It is a celebration of making it through the first year. Although I do remember my sister and I both had first birthday party themes, and I think mine was baseball. My sister's was the Wizard of Oz because my mom loved the Wizard of Oz. So there's pressure to come up with a theme. I don't know what it's going to be. But
my daughter's third, I think it was her third birthday. It was not her first. Her third birthday, maybe it was third or fourth. The theme was super pair, because she had a shirt. It was a purple shirt with a sparkly purple silver pear. Who she decided that made her the superhero Super Pear, and she decided she wanted a Super Pear birthday party. And I promise you, none of the other children knew what the heck a Super Pear was, but she was insistent on having a Super Pear themed birthday party.
That is excellent. That is excellent. So yeah, we only have 4 months to plan my daughter's first birthday party. I better get to work. But don't worry, my wife will definitely not be listening to this. My mom will probably tell on me when she listens to this, but that's okay.
Have fun planning this party. It's so fun.
Yeah, she will. Yeah, that's right. This is only the first, unless we have a second. This is the only first birthday party. So, all right, that's gonna do it for me and Chris this week. For Drew and for Chris, we are out of here.